Welcome to the Real Estate Red Flags podcast, the things no one tells you before or after you buy. I'm Joshua, ISA certified arborist and ASCA consulting arborist, joined by Ian, who's the owner of IM Home Inspections. Let's get into it. Today we are going to be covering what's not covered in a standard real estate inspection. Ian, I guess first let's just define the baseline. What systems and components are part of a standard visual inspection, and then we can go over what's not included.
Well, what is included is basically everything about the house itself, roof, foundation, and pretty much everything in between. So your electrical, your plumbing, heating, air conditioning, kitchens, bathrooms, interiors, windows, your attic, crawl space, if there is one. Everything from the ground up to the roof and everything in between is included in your home inspection.
Got it. Okay. And I assume it's nothing invasive, right? Just what you can see and access.
Right. California law and home inspection definitions pretty much across the country it's a non-invasive inspection, visual inspection. So it's not like on TV where we bring a sledgehammer and we start tearing out walls. Can you imagine if we did? I mean, who would fix it all? There's no tearing out walls. There's no x-ray vision. We do have thermal cameras and different things we use to help, but it is still basically a visual inspection.
I'm sure, kind of like you just mentioned, anyone that has ever watched like a home flipping HGTV show, especially if they're a newer buyer, they may not even know what is typically covered. So I guess, is there anything that most buyers assume an inspection covers that it actually doesn't, or is it just different situation?
There's three big things. What are they? What's the old saying? What are the three biggest important things in real estate? Location, location, location.
Right.
We assume as the home inspector, you've already picked the location. We're there to inspect the house itself, not the neighborhood. Not is it walkable, not is it a nice neighborhood. We kind of assume you've already figured that out. There was one time I was on an inspection in a questionable neighborhood, and the buyer turned to me and said, "So what do you think about this neighborhood? I've never actually been here before." And I'm like thinking, you really need to talk to your real estate agent about that.
I'm not the guy that, that's not your job.
I'm thinking I wouldn't live here, but I'm not one to judge. Everybody's got to live somewhere. And a while back on an inspection forum, someone said, "Hey, this house is next to a gas station. How do I report that?" Like, you don't. You don't think the client saw the gas station next door when they put a bid on the house? Like, we're not responsible for the neighborhood itself. So the location is not something that's going to be covered in the home inspection.
That's a good point. Is there a industry standard for what a standard inspection includes, or does it vary a lot by the inspection company that is used? Like, I don't know. Does that make sense?
There is an SOP, a standard procedure. There are several established ones, and they're all pretty much the same. A few states like Texas have their own SOP that is very specific to that state. But in general, most people use one of two SOPs, and they're pretty much identical. Now, other home inspectors will argue, no, this one's better. No, this one's better. No, this one says tomato. That one says tomato. It's the same basic thing at the end of the day. So yes, there are standards. We use standards set by the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors, which is the largest certifying agency in the world, and they're kind of the biggest company that sets standards, the biggest agency that sets standards. So we use their standards.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. I know we said earlier it's nothing invasive that is covered, but I want to talk about, I guess, things that are behind walls, such as wiring, plumbing, insulation. I would assume that for the most part, those aren't covered. But I guess if you could just explain to a certain degree how much those are covered, just to help, a new buyer understand what that would entail.
So obviously you can't see what's exactly in the walls. On plumbing, you look for what's sticking out of the wall because there's always that little bit of plumbing where they connect the valve underneath the sink. So I'm always after my guys, take pictures of that little bit sticking out because that will give you an indication of what is probably behind the walls.
Got it. That makes sense.
Same thing with wiring. No, we can't see the wiring behind the wall, but we can test all the outlets. That'll give us an indication. We can look in the attic. We can look in the crawl space of any visual wiring there. And of course, we're going to look at the electrical panel. So that will give us an indication of what wiring is most likely in the walls. Insulation is a little tricky because we're in Southern California and most homes really built before the early 2000s don't have insulation in the walls. There might be insulation in the attic. They're generally added afterwards. I've got a 1964 home. There was pretty much no insulation in the house when I bought it. I added some in the attic. There's still none in the walls.
Okay.
Welcome to Southern California for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess for that kind of thing, I'm sure it really varies where in the country you're at. In Southern California, there's not nearly as much of a need for insulation. Although it does get a little cold in the wintertime at night occasionally. But
occasionally.
Yeah. So what about like anything underground? So such as sewer lines, septic systems, I would assume those are not covered in a standard inspection.
Correct. So anything having to do with soil, obviously that kind of goes with location. We're not geologists. We're not looking at soil samples. Sewer obviously is not included in your standard inspection because it is not visible. All my guys do have sewer cameras, which are special cameras that, if assuming we can find a 3 or 4 inch clean out, we can send that camera down there. Now it's an extra service, a slight extra charge. Although at this point, I'd say 70-80% of all of our clients who buy single family residence are running the sewer scope because it is so important.
Yeah.
Put that camera down there and see what's going on. In Los Angeles, there's a lot of stuff in the news about water pipes. And while those are supply pipes that are in the news, the sewer pipes are just as bad, if not worse. They definitely, are subject to root intrusion and damage. So it is a good idea to get a sewer scope because otherwise you can't see it. 20 years ago when I bought my house, no one had a sewer camera. I don't think cameras had been invented yet. And I had all sorts of issues with my sewer. So I am very pro get a sewer inspection. So you don't happen to you what happened to me, where you move into your great house and then all your toilets are backing up every 6 months.
Oh, yeah, it seems like something that I would think everyone should want to do to add on. What about I know we've talked about this in a past episode before, but how about chimneys? Are those included in a standard inspection, or is that something completely special that has to get added on?
Well, you had to refer back to our chimney expert when we had Jason on. Basically, your SOP includes a very basic chimney inspection, very basic fireplace inspection, visual. So we're going to look at it. We're going to stick our head in there, and we're going to look at anything that's readily accessible within the firebox itself and hopefully on the roof. Take a picture if there's a spark arrestor, if there's a rain cap, what's the general consensus of the chimney. Now, getting a chimney specialist who puts the camera up the chimney and goes much more in depth, as explained in the last episode, those guys have special certifications and specialized knowledge that goes far beyond any home inspector. You go to a chimney forum, and those guys are talking about things in terms that, very, very specialized. So you do get a basic fireplace inspection, and if you really want something more in depth, then you can get a chimney specialist, which comes down to, a lot of it's personal preference. A lot of people look at the fireplace and go, well, it's Southern California. I'm not going to use it.
Right.
Don't care. I've been in my house 18 years. Never once had a fire in our fireplace. Some people, they're coming from other states. whatever. They really want that fireplace inspected.
Yeah, that episode we did previously about chimneys, I never knew there was so much to it. So I definitely learned a ton. And yeah, I think that's good advice. Essentially, if you're planning to use it a lot, then that would make sense for someone to want to get it looked at in more in depth. But like you said, if you're not going to use it much, I'm sure it's not quite as important.
But my advice to realtors is stop photoshopping fires in the fireplace in the listings, because it is very embarrassing to the listing agent and to the seller when we look at a fireplace and go, "This thing doesn't work," and the
Hmm.
client's like, "But there's a picture of it
What do you
working."
mean? I saw it in the picture. It was
Yeah,
it
and
was
then you go to the listing photo, and someone photoshopped in a fire in the fireplace, and
yeah.
that gets agents in trouble, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean that's like I don't know, it's almost like a lie if you're telling them. So, um anyways, what about what about pools, spas, and hot tubs? How much of that is included in a general, or is it not at all included in a general inspection?
It is not included in the general inspection. That is a specialty inspection, which we do. I I, I I grew up in San Francisco where nobody has a pool. I really wanted to move to LA and get a house with a pool, which I eventually did. So I'm very
There you
passionate
go.
about pools. And I make everybody on my team get passionate about pools. But if you read the standard SOP, pools are not inspected. There's a separate SOP for pools, so that is a separate inspection. And make sure your inspector understands pools if they're going to do the pool. There are some home inspectors out there who will say, "Yeah, I'll do the pool," and then they show up and all they really do is, "Yeah, I see problems. You need a pool inspector." Like, you didn't really do anybody any good. And there are some guys out there who specialize just in pools and do
Yeah.
nothing else. And more power to them. If I could make a living just inspecting pools, I probably would. 'Cause it's a lot of fun. I think inspecting pools is fun. But
Yeah.
most pools we inspect do have at least one or more serious electrical issues. As I'm sure we'll talk about in another episode. Most pools, at least in Los Angeles, were built in the 50s and 60s, maybe early 70s, and there were no electrical codes about swimming pools until 1978, which means most of them weren't enforced to the 80s. And
Yeah.
even then, I've seen brand new pools and brand new houses that have serious electrical issues with the pool. So always get your pool inspected.
I think that would be a must. If there's a house with a pool, you should definitely get it inspected if you're buying it. How about things like environmental hazards? Mold, lead paint. I know that used to be used. So are those at all included in a standard inspection?
That's all not non-visual stuff.
Yeah.
Lead paint, I mean, you will get, and if you buy a house in California, you will be handed this big brochure.
Hmm.
Every agent will give you one that the state mandates. You get this big lead disclosure. Do you have lead in your house? Probably. It was built before the 70s. I would just say it's a given. I don't really see the point in testing for it. It's probably there. Don't
Yeah.
eat. I mean, the main thing is don't eat the paint. That's really what this is. My late mother actually worked on a research project on this when I was a kid, and it was basically came down to don't eat the paint. Um, mold is everywhere. We could probably do a 2-hour episode on mold by itself. Mold is everywhere. It's in the air. You just don't want concentrated mold in the house. You may or may not be able to see it. It's technically not mold until a lab tests it. We can't do a mold inspection, which is again, it's another service, but it's in your California real estate contract. Says your agent doesn't know about mold and your home inspector doesn't know about mold. The only person who knows about mold is a certified hygienist, which is the laboratory tech. So if you order a mold inspection, then we come in with special equipment. We take air samples. We may take surface samples. We send that all to the lab, and then the laboratory determines if it's mold and if it's an above
Got it.
average level of mold.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure we could do a full episode on that, and we probably should. But I'd be super curious to see. I can't. I mean, I would imagine a lot of times you're seeing at least some level of mold coming back on those tests. So
Well, I mean, there's mold in the air everywhere. You
yeah, that's what I
don't
mean.
escape
Yeah.
mold. We're both breathing mold right now. Just
Right.
it's so low levels of concentration, it's not really bothering us. And now I'm getting ahead of myself. But the other issue with mold is, don't you people respond to mold the same way?
Mhm.
If you had a room full of 10 people and I put a big thing of moldy drywall in the middle of it, a couple of people are going to start sneezing, a couple of people are going to get red eyes, one person's probably going to have a serious respiratory issue, and then there's going to be people in the room who don't even notice because it affects everybody differently, and that's why there's no government standards for what is or isn't a dangerous level of mold. None.
Yeah.
The government has no standards because it affects every person differently.
Got it. So that is an add-on that you guys do?
Yes.
Okay. What percent of people would you say like go for that add-on versus ones that don't necessarily care?
It's pretty low. It's probably about 20%.
Yeah.
It does say, like I said, in the California real estate purchase contract, that if you don't get a mold inspection, you're acting against the advice of your broker. But mold inspections are, to be honest, expensive
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just our time and our equipment, and then we have to pay the lab, and then there's shipping, and it gets kind of pricey quickly. So not everybody wants to pay the additional mold fee. But those that do, they sleep better at night.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, if that's something that's super concerning to anyone, then they should definitely do it. Like you said, sleep better at night. What about things like sheds and storage containers on properties that are staying? Are those part of us?
The SOP says no.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we'll tend to give them a cursory look, depending on what it is. I mean, a prefab shed that you bought from, one of the hardware stores, like, there's nothing really can go wrong. Is it a prefab?
Yeah.
Um, any structure that I think is under 10, is it 100 or 10? Now you have to check the numbers on it. But small structures you don't need a building permit for. Like you don't need a building permit to build a little tree house or a little garden house.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing really there, worthy of inspection because we're not expecting it to be decode or anything. As long as it doesn't have any like very obvious electrical hazards.
Yeah. Okay. That
But
makes sense.
your little 10 by 10 shed, I mean, you don't need a permit for it. It doesn't require it. There are no building codes for it, it's anything like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I would that makes sense. If you don't need a permit for it, it's just a little something you bought at Home Depot and put together in a weekend. I would not expect that to get included, but hey, some people may not know. So I'm glad we're talking about it. What about so I'm pretty sure this is not included, but what about pests and wood destroying organisms like termites? That's a separate inspection as well, right?
in California, yes, it is a separate inspection done by separate company. This varies from state to state. I know some states, your home inspector and your termite inspector are often the same person and can be done at the same time. In California, they really want it separated and and pest inspections are highly regulated by the state government, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore it's usually a separate person uh, using a separate SOP, separate operating procedure, who does completely separate inspection. Because those inspections also then have to be registered with the state, whereas a home inspection is not. So in California, it's very separate. In another state, like Texas, I think it's really easy in that state for your home inspector to get a pest license, and certain
Okay.
other states as well. But because California considers termites to be a really big issue, they want it as separate. They want it very separated.
Got it. That's good to know. So I guess, whoever's listening, wherever you're from, sounds like it would vary by state. So definitely look into that. And then I gotta ask, so as a tree guy,
Yes.
I gotta ask, I know trees aren't really included unless they're, causing an obvious problem, like you see it pushing on the house or something. But what I'm curious about are what about irrigation systems? Are those included at all? Are they looked at in standard inspection or?
Irrigation systems are not part of the SOP. They're not generally included unless we see something really obvious, like, leaking. Uh, here in Southern California, everybody has, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have very big lawns, very complicated irrigation systems. And I know from just my own house, if I were coming into my house to inspect the irrigation system, it would take me over an hour just
Yeah,
trying to find all the valves and trying to find how everything works and where all the parts are. The other thing about irrigation systems is they break really easily. Lawnmower, the dog, the kids run over it. Just because something was working perfectly now doesn't mean it's going to work perfectly in 30 days or in 60 days. And I think most home inspectors don't want the liability of, it was aimed at the rose bush yesterday, and now it's 30 days later, it's aiming away from the bush.
yeah,
And all you really have to do is just turn it. I mean, it moves pretty easily. Uh, but the headaches, I mean, just know from being a homeowner and having an irrigation system that is constantly breaking, and I have like bins full of parts in my garage because they need constant update and constant maintenance. So it would be kind of a nightmare to inspect those. I mean, I suppose we could, but most people don't want to pay for a whole extra hour of an inspector being there just to cover
yeah.
the irrigation system.
I'm not surprised at all that they're not covered. And being on the tree side of things, um, it's typically landscapers that are dealing with the irrigation. But I will say that's one of the most common issues I hear is that my irrigation is broken, or can you fix the irrigation system? And it's so I'm not surprised at all to hear that that's not included because it is involved.
It comes down to one thing: if the grass is green, it's working. If the grass
Yeah,
is yellow, it doesn't work. Pretty
yeah.
much
There
that
you go.
simple. I mean, if
Yeah,
someone asks me, why can't you inspect the irrigation system? And I'm looking at this green lush lawn, I'm like, there's
the
your evidence.
grass looks great. It's working.
I'm looking at the dead lawn and it's a bunch of dirt and a couple dead or weeds. It's like, well, obviously it's not working. Like there's
Yeah,
there's no real in between.
definitely. Well, I mean that's all I have here. It seems like if you're getting a home inspection, you should definitely ask your inspector what is covered, and if you want to decide to do any of the extras, definitely important to bring that up early before it's too late.
You forgot one last question though, the most important question.
What's that?
What about the trees?
Yeah.
The trees.
Well, no, the trees are not included in a standard inspection from what I understand, unless it's something very obvious, right? Like I imagine if you saw a tree like rubbing against the roof and causing visible damage, I imagine that would be in your report.
Correct. But what do you do?
Well, so as a certified arborist, we don't cover houses, we cover the trees on properties, and our main goal is to make sure that they're healthy and safe. Trees are a lot like people in that they can get many different diseases, and believe it or not, there are ways to prevent it and ways to correct it when they do have them. So for me, my main job is to make sure they're healthy and safe. And that could be anything from a disease, anything from the way it's growing, even the location or how it's been cared for in the past. I mean, I could go on and on, honestly, and I'm sure we'll have a full episode on this at some point. But Yeah, those are the two main important things: are trees healthy and safe? Because if they're not, they can be a big safety issue. So
Yes. So for a lot has trees on it, get your tree inspection.
absolutely. All right, Ian. Well, hey, good episode. Looking forward to the next one.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Red Flags podcast. If you learned something today, share it with someone about to buy a home. They'll thank you later. Looking forward to seeing you guys next time.